And now on CFB Unfiltered, we have the feature interview that we promised you with Brett Ciancia of Pick Six Previews. Brett puts out, this is his 10th annual edition of Pick Six Previews, and it has been graded for the last 9 years as the most accurate prediction, the most accurate analysis magazine publication out there. And so thankful that Brett has some time to join us. Brett, appreciate you coming on CFB Unfiltered.
Yeah, Blayne, appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure to be on with you guys. And yeah, it's the best time of year. I've been hunkering down for the last 7 months writing this thing, but once we make it to August and the book goes live, I love hopping around to shows and podcasts across the country, and excited to break it down with you guys.
And if you're watching on the YouTube feed and not on the podcast feed, you can see, make sure you're following Brett, as thousands already do, tens of thousands already do, Pick Six Previews, at Pick Six Previews on Twitter. But Brett, we're getting right into it here we're doing a Big 12 and SEC preview show. We're going to start with the Big 12 right here. And everybody kind of knows about Spencer Rattler and Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma, and expected to just pick up right where they've kind of left off here recently with a just high-powered offense. However, I want to talk about some of the second-tier teams, and even Iowa State, everybody I think expects to be good under Matt Campbell. They're kind of 1 and 2. But TCU and Texas, some under-the-radar type teams maybe. Just wanted to get your opinion on, out of those two, who has maybe the highest ceiling and could get themselves in the conversation to be in the top 2 in the Big 12 before it's all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a very crowded Big 12 at the top this year. A lot of solid candidates for that top 2 spots in Dallas. And yeah, I agree with you. It's Oklahoma, number 1. I have them in my playoff bracket. And number 2, Iowa State. Just so much talent coming back from a pretty proven roster from last year. So the number 3 spot, I actually have TCU. And, you know, the AP poll and coaches poll just came out earlier this week, and TCU's unranked in both of them. I have them 9th nationally. So there's a pretty big discrepancy between my poll and what came out this week. So why am I so high on TCU? Well, when you think of their program, they're what I like to call a developmental program. They go in cycles. Gary Patterson and his staff are excellent in player development, taking 3-star guys and what's now become 4-star guys and turning them into pros and all-conference players and wins on the field. So as a developmental program, they go through cycles. So when they're younger and newer starters, they struggle a little bit, lose some coin flip games. But when they become veteran, like they are this time around, they can contend for conference titles. And when you break it down position group by position group, there's a lot to like. You know, at receiver, that stable they have right now is their deepest they've had since that 2014 team that surged all the way to the Sugar Bowl. And, you know, if you talk to Horned Frogs fans or Big 12 fans, they say should have been in that playoff in 2014. So, you know, Quentin Johnson on the outside is an All-American caliber player. Tay Barber and J.D. Spielman in the slot. Spielman, if you remember his name, he was the 3rd all-time receiver at Nebraska that transferred down. 5-star running back and Zach Evans, an offensive line is veteran. And the kind of the key parts of the offense is Max Duggan. And this is a quarterback that took over in 2019 as a freshman, a true freshman, got thrown in there. Struggled a little bit, you know, had a typical freshman year. He was crushed by those NFL draft analysts who were looking at Jalen Reagor's tapes and were really giving Duggan a hard time. I'm a Duggan defender. I think he's got a cannon for an arm. He's one of the fastest players on the field as a runner. So I think that in his 3rd season as a starter, he's going to take a pretty big step forward. And, you know, the defense speaks for itself, given Gary Patterson's track record there, his unique 4-2-5 match zone or match reading defense. You know, in the Big 12 and offensive league, they needed a way to combat all that. So, you know, defensive guru right there. And, you know, it's a crowded secondary, a deep defensive line. There's really a lot to like with TCU.
Touching on Gary Patterson real quick, in terms of his coaching style and now having a trusted quarterback, I know that Georgia is way more talented over in the SEC, but are there some parallels you see there to, okay, a defensive head coach now has a quarterback that he can firmly trust, and maybe he's going to open things up a little bit more? Is there kind of some similarities there, not on a talent aspect, but in terms of their team narrative and kind of functioning, how they're going to go into 2021?
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that because, you know, the storyline with Georgia the last decade or so has been defense first. Under Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning, they always are turning out top 5, top 3 defenses, but haven't had the offense to match until last November, that is. But similar with TCU, they're defense first. They have been most of their time in the Big 12. I know some of those 2014 and 15 teams, they started airing the ball out a lot, but really struggled on offense the last handful of years under Sonny Cumbie, their newer offensive coordinator. Now Cumbie's gone. He's back to Texas Tech as alma mater. So you have a little bit of a shakeup schematically. We'll see if that plays to the advantages in the roster talents. But yes, I agree on a program level. It's interesting because I run a per play and opponent adjusted percentile. I know that sounds really boring, but basically a way to get a number on each offense and defense from every Power 5 team. And if you look at the 10-year averages, the most defense first programs. So when you look in defense first offense, the most defense first, Georgia's in there and TCU are in there. So you picked out 2 similar profiles for sure.
Now with Texas, before we move over to the SEC, because like I said, we're going to focus more on these up and coming type teams. With Steve Sarkisian coming aboard, is it just a matter of how high Texas's ceiling is really matches the aptitude of either Casey Thompson or Hudson Card, whoever ends up winning that quarterback battle? Looks early on like Casey Thompson. Also hearing some good things, reports out of Texas camp, out of Hudson Card and some scrimmages and things. But does it kind of depend on the aptitude and just being able to maybe even perform like a guy from Florida last year and Kyle Trask, who played even above his ability, it seemed like at times? Is that kind of the scenario for Texas to maybe really become a contender in the Big 12 this year?
Well, it's interesting. I think the Kyle Trask comparison might be a little different. Trask was a pretty seasoned veteran there at Florida, a couple of years as a backup, and he started most of that 2019 season. I think he took over in week 3 when there were a couple injuries to Felipe Franks and the other backup. So he had almost a whole season of experience heading into his record-setting 2020. So for these two, it's inexperience. I mean, yeah, it's a battle right now in camp. I think Hudson Card has the advantage right now. Casey Thompson we saw for about a half of the bowl game. And, yeah, he looked great, but it's just a half of one game. So definitely unproven. And from a program that relied so much on Sam Ehlinger. I mean, he did so much, not only in the pass game, it was like 95 touchdowns passing, 11,000 pass yards, but on the ground. He shouldered 550 carries, roughly 12 a game. That's the size of like a leading running back. So, yeah, he did so much for that program. I think there'll be a transition there. There is a decent offensive line in front of him. It's very veteran there, and they had good run push last year and pretty good pass pro. So we'll see. Now, Sarkisian-wise, he's great with X's and O's. I mean, you saw it. I know that he had the best talent in America at Alabama, but some of those touchdowns were scored before the play was snapped. I mean, in that national title game, the pre-snap motion he was using with Devontae Smith, getting him into favorable matchups. I mean, they were scoring before the ball was snapped. You could just visually see it happening. So now it's a matter of how quickly he can install all that and get this young quarterback up to speed and get that defense going too. So, yeah, I think somewhat of a transition, but still good enough for me to finish 4th in the conference.
And now transitioning over towards the Southeastern Conference, your favorites over there, you got Alabama winning the West. That talent kind of speaks for itself, even though they're replacing so much talent from the year prior, and Alabama replaces a ton every year, but just the amount of NFL talent. I think it was 10 NFL draft picks, several in the first round alone, first 2 rounds. So it was just an unbelievable output by Alabama. And then, of course, Georgia. You actually have Georgia as the favorite to win the SEC, with kind of JT Daniels solidifying things for that offense. But I did want to see, is it a team like a Florida with Emory Jones, or now Will Levis having the quarterback job that looks to be on lock over there at Kentucky? We'll start with the East first. Or those two teams, how can that kind of play out in the East as far as the team that can challenge Georgia the most?
Yeah, so those are the 2 contenders. I went with Florida number 2 in the East and Kentucky 3rd. And quarterbacks might be questions for both programs, but really their strengths, their roster strengths are at different spots at both programs. I mean, and they're distinctly different too. I'll start with Florida. They're great recruiters. They average in the top 10, number 8 the last 5 years. So there's 5 stars galore, especially on defense. And this is usually one of those defense-first programs too. But they took a rare step back last year under third year under Todd Grantham. Now all that young talent's back. It's 5 stars along the defensive line. It's a secondary that's somewhat improving. I mean, it can't get worse from that pass defense output. And I do trust Grantham. He's got a long track record with Dan Mullen, not only at Florida, but before that at Mississippi State and Louisville some seasons. So I think he bounces back from a mulligan year defensively. So there's star power on that side of the ball. Offensively, they go through quite a transition. Now it's a Heisman candidate with Kyle Trask gone, but these 2 playmaker receivers, Kadarius Toney, the do-it-all X factor from the slot, and of course Kyle Pitts, the first tight end to finish in the Heisman top 10 since the 70s. So just incredible production. All 3 of those guys are gone. Now, if there's anyone to do it, it is Dan Mullen. He's been incredible with quarterback development. This is going all the way back to 2004 at Utah when he did it with Alex Smith there. Of course, he managed the duo of quarterbacks, Chris Leak and Tim Tebow, on that national title team at Florida. He did it with Nick Fitzgerald and Dak Prescott at Mississippi State, and, of course, Trask again. So, with Emory Jones, it might be a return back to the old offensive style that he likes to run, where it's quarterback run, some wildcat stuff. So it's going to look a lot different than the pass first and pass second, really. Last year it was all passing for Florida. So, but overall, just a ton of talent, and I do like both coaches, so I think they'll be fine. Third place, I have Kentucky. Now, this is kind of the inverse. They are not the best recruiters. Maybe top 25 some seasons, but sadly in the SEC's footprint, that's near the bottom of the barrel in such a tight recruiting conference. So what they do, though, is that they have all those buzzwords you hear about, and some people don't like to hear, but it's true with this program. Fit and culture and team and all those buzzwords. But they certainly have a program identity. It's hard-nosed. It's always strong offensive lines, and that holds true again. There's multiple All-American candidates up front. They landed Darius Rosenthal from LSU. He's another All-American candidate. So it's going to be a power running attack. It's strong offensive lines, and it's a tough defense too. And most of that's back. Now, the thing you mentioned there, the quarterback, Will Levis, a transfer in from Penn State, the key to unlocking Kentucky to becoming a top 25 team is, can they get anything at all out of the pass game? And I say that. It's not to make fun. Literally, they had 0 passing in 2019 when they put a receiver at quarterback, Lynn Bowden. One of the best individual performances I've ever seen. The guy, they literally just ran like a middle school wildcat offense, and it was unstoppable. So if they can get any threat in the air at all, it's going to open up running lanes for that duo of Chris Rodriguez and Kavasier Smoke, one of the best duos in America. So we'll see how it turns out. If you're unfamiliar with Levis, he's from Penn State, up in my footprint up here in the Big Ten country. But he didn't get too much playing time. He played a little bit against Ohio State in 19 in backup duty, and he was better on the ground than in the air. He's a physical runner. Took a ton of carries there, so we'll see how that fits in.
Another team that I would almost put really close now, transitioning to the West, Brett, with kind of Alabama in terms of talent-wise, is Texas A&M. Jimbo Fisher is really starting to get the recruiting rolling there in College Station, and I think with some of the business footprint there with oil money and things like that, and the NIL coming into feature, Texas A&M's recruiting is only going to get better and improve. I think their point is, can Hayes King be good enough to kind of propel that offense and kind of replace somewhat what Kellen Mond left? But I think everybody expects them to be competitive. But really, Brett, the 3 teams I wanted to talk about that I view kind of in the same tier, even though LSU's 2 years removed from a national championship, you have LSU, Ole Miss, and Arkansas that are right there. I know LSU you got ranked up really high, but Ole Miss and Arkansas are teams that you're high on as well.
Yeah, well, the SEC West is the best division of football this year. Again, all 7 teams made my national top 40, so that gives you an idea of how crowded it is. Real quickly with A&M, I'm on Texags radio every week, and I made this analogy a bunch over there that if college football programs were stocks, I'd be investing in A&M. I mean, this program's on the rise quickly. You already hit on the money they have, but they have the geographic footprint in the hotbed of Texas recruiting. Jimbo Fisher bringing in top 5 classes. It's a proven offense. Excellent coordinator, Mike Elko. So, yeah, they're really a quarterback away. But, yeah, it's crowded. Like I said, LSU, I have number 11 nationally. That's only good for 3rd in the West. When you look at LSU, it was an all-time transition season. Everything clicked perfectly in 2019, and all of that left Baton Rouge for 2020. And that coupled with maybe a poor coordinator hire here and there, and an offseason that canceled out spring ball and a lot of the summer, so you couldn't install anything. And it was super young as a roster, so it was a disaster. Now, with that said, though, it's all back. All that young talent that played ahead of schedule is all experienced and veteran for 2021. They made more coordinator tweaks, which I think these will do better for the full season, a full off season, that is. And when you look at position group by position group, they're loaded. I mean, this is a 5-star, top 5 recruiting program. So they're poised for a huge, huge comeback season. I hope you got your jokes in on LSU last year because they're coming back quickly. And then from there, these are two programs that, like TCU, were unranked in the AP and coaches polls, but I have them ranked in Ole Miss and Arkansas. First with Ole Miss, going through their second year under Lane Kiffin. This is an offense where it's one of the best in the country schematically. The way he tags every play pre-snap with a run option and a pass option, RPO, and he hits on them. They hit on him. Matt Corral was incredible. He's top 3 in QB rating returning this year. And it's a great duo running back with Jerry and Ely and Snoop Connor. And they always pump out receivers at Ole Miss. You see them all playing on Sundays, and I'm sure there's more in the pipeline coming up. Braylon Sanders, one of them. So that offense is going to be scoring a ton. What brings them from just an offense to a top 25 team in my eyes is, 9 starters back on defense, and they made some improvements where they needed it most. They added the number 1 junior college defensive tackle and the number 2 JUCO D tackle. So, adding some strength there in the middle of the defense, I think they make a major step forward. And quickly last with Arkansas, also a second-year bonus under Sam Pittman. This was a hire that was laughed at nationally by all the blue checks there on Twitter. And I like to wait a year or two, see how they can build a staff, see how they can recruit. And so far, Sam Pittman, to his credit, has been perfect. He hired Barry Odom on defense, Kendall Briles on offense. So far, so good. Now, the 3-7 record might not jump off the page to you from last year. That might, look pretty weak. But when you look at 2 specific games, those game results should have been flipped. The Auburn game, it was one of the last plays of the game. Bo Nix spiked the ball backwards. Should have been a fumble.
Definitely.
And that flipped the whole game result right there. The SEC refs admitted it. And then the next week or a couple weeks later against LSU, there was a botched targeting call that flipped the game result. So it's really, in my eyes, a 5-5 team and trending towards a winning record this year with 20 starters back, very veteran, and a second-year bonus on both sides of the ball.
And Brett, lastly, did want to circle back, kind of it fits in with both of these because in your Final Four predictions, you have Oklahoma as the number 1 seed and Georgia as the 2 seed, both as their respective conference champions. So we're here talking about the Big 12, talking about the SEC, and you have Oklahoma and Georgia as the top 2 seeds going in to the Final Four. Is this mostly about the just overall way that Oklahoma and Georgia have recruited, plus the solidification of the quarterback position there with JT Daniels and Spencer Rattler, how good they are? I know it's a quarterback factory over there at Oklahoma, but just give everybody out there some reasoning why you're so high on the Sooners and the Bulldogs this year.
Yeah, well, Oklahoma versus Georgia, that's, at this rate, that's going to be a mid-October game in the SEC footprint a couple years from now. But yeah, so both these teams, they're loaded for playoff runs. It's more than just the recruiting. It's really all-encompassing. Every angle you look at these programs, recruiting, their coordinators, their styles of play, their experience, their veteran starters coming back, All-American talent coming back. And then also the transfer portal. These were 2 of the biggest winners from that. Unfortunately, as we record here mid-August, Georgia just announced a couple injuries to those transfers I had mentioned, the Tyke Smith and I think Eric Gilbert. Well, so yeah, but still, when you break it down, what it is with these 2 programs specifically is they have long track records on one side of the ball. Oklahoma with their offense, Georgia with their defense. But what makes 2021 special for both is now they have the other sides of the ball ready for a championship run. First, Oklahoma always have the offense. They always have Heisman candidates and some of the best yards per play every year. But now 10 starters back on defense. They were quietly a top 25 D last year out of nowhere. It's the 3rd year under Alex Grinch. He runs what he calls his speed defense. Speed D, meaning it's smaller guys, quicker guys, trading size for speed. So I like what they're doing there, and it's a complete team. And then with Georgia, the offense used to be stuck in the mud. It used to look like 1980 on offense, and that was good for winning 9 or 10 games a year. I mean, it's been a solid top 10 program for a while now. But I think really to unlock that true 5-star talent they have on the roster, it was necessary to modernize. And you saw LSU do this too in 2019, bringing in Joe Brady, and they started throwing the ball all over the place. Alabama did the same with Lane Kiffin about 2016, I'd say. So I think Georgia's following suit, bringing in Todd Monken, this Big 12 passing attack. It's vertical shots, and it's really going to play to the advantages they have athletically on the outside. All it took for me was finding an arm because the first couple weeks it wasn't there. DeJuan Mathis didn't fit the scheme, and Stetson Bennett had kind of a talent ceiling. He wasn't the 5-star caliber that was brought with JT Daniels, who was a freshman starter at USC. And once he took over at Georgia after that bye week, Georgia played excellent offense. And I know that you'll get critics saying, oh, look who they played those 4 games. But my numbers even, they adjust for the opponent's strength and the opponent averages, and it was still incredible. So long story short, both these teams now have they fixed their flaws on the other sides of the ball, and they're complete teams and should be making playoff runs.
Great insight there from Brett Ciancia of Pick Six Previews. Brett, before we let you go, let everybody know where they can find the latest preview magazine and publication, the PDFs, all that kind of stuff that they can get from Pick Six Previews.
Yeah, thanks so much again for having me. And it's pick6previews.com. It's a digital instant download. It's just like the preview magazines you see on newsstands, but it's a one-man show. I do all 66 Power 5 teams. It's just me. I'm watching spring games and game tape and running my numbers, calling head coaches, calling coordinators, and writing and editing this thing. So it's up there on the website, pick6previews.com. A couple sample pages, a couple testimonials in there too. One from ESPN's Chris Balica, big testimonial there. And follow us on Twitter at Pick6Previews. So thanks again, Blayne, for having me, and best of luck this fall with the show.
Thank you so much. That's Brett Ciancia of Pick Six Previews here on CFB Unfiltered.